We are going to check the version, but like the server. Yeah, just enter. Click here in the terminal. We are going to check terminal. Yeah, you can put install the installation. While that click here in terminal, here there is you can okay, byte space minus b.
Okay. So whatever be whatever
Flash.
you say to start.
And just be and enter.
Okay.
Oh, no, you have a fight. Close the terminal. Here.
Capisco che non ride. You would most likely press the play button over there. And the result will be visible over here at the bottom. So let's all try that. Yeah, let's just run something. Let's print something like this. And let's run it. And when you run it, you should be able to see it over here. Everybody's able to see whatever they typed. Perfect. You have to press this button and then you see it. Yeah. Hello. Right. So what we did right now is we wrote a command, we wrote some code. Good job. That's a starting point. We wrote some code and we executed it. You can think about execution as something like playing the code, right? Like a video, you just play the code and the code starts running from the top to the bottom. It always runs from top to the bottom. So if you have something like print hello and you say something like print Kishore, it's always going to run one after each other. Yeah, it's never going to go from the bottom up. It's always going to be top down. Now let's try something a little bit more extra. Let's delete all of this and let's do something like this. Let's print that out. gives the same result. So two things happened here. Number one is that we gave my name a position. We assigned it, right? Let's talk about what assignment is. My name is Kishore, right? And earlier my name was inside this print. And print basically does one thing, and that is it shows whatever you feed it. Yeah. So if you put Maria into it, it'll show you and say print, it prints Maria. Misha, it prints Misha. Yeah. So whatever you put into it, it outputs it. And what happened here is that I took my name out from the print and I assigned it to this. It could be anything. It could be meow. And if I type meow, it'll still do the same thing. So, this means nothing. The name, it means nothing. The fact is that we assigned my name to whatever is on the left, right? So if I want to say number, and I say number one, and I print number, I will see number one. Hello, right? Sure. Better? Beautiful. Let me just close this. So the important thing to remember here is that what we are doing is we are creating a new variable, right? So this meow that we said is, us assigning something. It's a variable. And this term is very important because this will be like, we use it everywhere. A variable, yeah? So if you take something and you put the equal sign before it, and then you give it a name, we say that we assigned this Kishore to meow, right? Or we can say age 28, and I print this out. What just happened here is that I assigned the number 18 to the variable age. Yeah. So it's just us taking some value and assigning it to something else. Could be anything, any name, it doesn't matter, as long as you have this equal mark. Yes. Good question. Good question. So usually we don't do things like this, right? And the good thing about programming today is that there are lots of things that tell us that this is wrong, right? So you should ideally do something like, write something, anything. It could be cat, right? So cats. So I could do this. I can say something like cat's name, and I can say Rufus, right? You can say cat. You can say C, but don't put a number in there. Yeah, or don't do things like this. Just use letters. So, mhm, mhm, good question. Because later in the code, we will use these variables to play with other variables. I'll show you an example. So let's say my current age, right? I'm just gonna say it's 29. If I say next year, I will be 1 year older. So if I want to print my age next year. Now remember, when I gave this 29 and I assigned it to my current, this automatically becomes 19. Yeah, it takes the form that you assigned it to. So I could do something really cool like this. My current plus next year, and I can do this. I can do mathematical operations on it. And I have 30, right? So what happened here, I will answer your question in a bit. What happens here is that when we assign something to another thing, to a variable, we basically give it that, we make it that. Yeah. So right now, we say Kishore is equal to, let's just call it name to make it easier. We say Kishore is equal to name. And so name is equal to Kishore. Whenever you use the word name, that will carry the word Kishore, right? And the reason why creating these variables are important is because we can use them again and again and again. Otherwise, we have to do things like this. Now, this is okay, it works. But when you have very complex, very long programs, you lose track of what's happening. Which is why it's important to name things. Yeah. It's like giving a baby a name at birth. Otherwise, they'll just be, just humans. Getting names for people helps us identify them, to work with them, to call them, to give them a name, so that we know how to identify something. So these variables or creating variables in programming is super important. Now, let's not, I will show you more examples of this when we are going forward. Yeah. But any questions so far on variables before we move on? Yes. Meaning? Okay, good question. So the computer is not smart, right? Maybe ChatGPT is, but the computer that you guys are working with, not so much. It works on the instructions that you feed it. So if you give it wrong information, it's going to get confused. So programming is a very precise science, let's say. You have to know what you're feeding it so that it'll give you something that you want. So if you say my current is 29, but in your head you actually way of knowing that, right? So you got to make sure that you give a precise input to get the correct output. Yes. Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Let's try that. In this context, it is not. Does it look like this? Exactly like this? Look it up. 1 second. Mhm. Because hold on. Hold on. Can you check this out? There's a syntax error. Okay. Huh? Good question. It should not be in question mark within these quotes.
We have to. Or
We shouldn't right now. Hold on to that thought. I will show you. Because you have the quotation marks. I will show you. Now, remember, as I said, programming is an exact science. So, if your my age next year looks like this, and you want to print it, do not do this, right? Do not cover it with quotation marks if you don't have quotation marks here. If you want to print this out, you will copy exactly this. But if you do this, you're going to run into an error. So, I will show you why this is the way it is in the next slides. So, let's say that sometimes, when we're writing a lot of code, sometimes it gets a bit too much. So we write some really bad, ugly garbage code. And that's okay, right? As long as you remove it later on. So when there is, let's say, bad, ugly garbage code, and we do not want to print it, or we don't want to run it, what we do is we do something called commenting it out. So right now, because I'm printing my age and I'm printing next year, I'm printing the assigned variables. So 30 is my age next year. 1 is, what I gave as next year, right? So I see 30 and 1. But let's say I don't want to see 1, right? I just wrote that, but I will need it later on, but I don't want it right now. So what we do is we do something called commenting it out. And when we do this, it basically prevents the code from being run. And you can see it here. Right now, we only have 30 because running of this print was cancelled out. If I remove this and I play it again, voila, 30 and 1. If I want to cancel this, I can. Then I will only see 1. With me so far? So, this is something that we use all the time. We write some really ugly garbage code that we're not proud about, but we will need it later on. So we just put it out there, cancel it, and pray that we remember to remove it before we ship it. Right. So let's go into something interesting. Now, in every language, English, Spanish, whatever, you have different ways of working with the language, right? And in programming also, we have different ways of operating with this language. And we call these ways of operation data types, right? So Python has several data types, but the most important of them all is these 4. We call one a string, and a string is basically anything that is covered by quotation marks. So this is a string because it's covered by quotation marks, right? Now, this quotation marks could be single, it could be double. It doesn't matter. As long as it's covered by a quotation mark, it's a string. And this is like the primary method of identifying what a string is. Yeah? Just keep it in the back of your mind. Quotation marks, strings. And the next data type is what we call integer. An integer is very simple. It's a number, and it's a whole number. So an example of an integer is, let's, create a variable and say this is an integer because it's a whole number. So is this, and so is this. With me so far? What is not an integer? Yes, exactly, because it's 1. Yeah, we can consider next year as an integer. My current age could be an integer, but what is this? Exactly. But what happens when I do this? Exactly. It's no longer an integer, it becomes a string. And the next one is called floats. Very similar to integer, but only different is it carries a decimal. Yeah. So if there's a point, it's a float. Now it's an integer. This is a float. This is a float because of exactly. Anything with the decimal point becomes a float. Anything without it, exactly, integer. We do this, exactly. Yeah. So remember these 3 data types. And the final one is called Boolean. Now, Boolean is important. It's very, very important. And we will see why in the future. But the only thing that you have to remember is that in integers, it could be any number. It could be 1,535,000. It doesn't matter. In string, it can be any random thing as long as it's covered by a quotation mark. Yeah. Floats, it could be 10.555555, anything. Yeah. Could be anything random. With Boolean, there's only 2 possible, let's say, outcomes. And one is called true, and the second Boolean is called false. There's only 2 of these. So a Boolean can either be true, it can either be false. That's all it can be. A string can be my name, your name, the building's name in quotation marks, anything. Integer could be 5, 10, 15, 500. Float can be 10.5, 35.5, 36.5. Anything as long as there's a decimal point. Yeah? Okay. So, real quick. What is this? Uh-huh. And what is this? Uh-huh. What about this? What about this? Mm-hmm. Good. Clear on all the data types so far? Good. Moving on. Yes, I will. So, now that we know what these data types is, let's talk about what we can do with them. Yeah? So, the easiest to start with is integers, right? So, let's say, like we did earlier, right? Number 1. Let's assign it to number 5, right? And number 2, let's assign it to 10. And what do you think will happen when I do number 1 and I do this? What do you think will be the output? 15? You sure? Bingo. Right? And what happens if I do this? Hmm. Okay. And what happens if I do this? Hmm. Hello. And what happens if I do this? Hmm. Yeah, exactly. Right? So you can see how we have the basic math operations over here, right? And this is possible to us because these variables are basically integers. So me doing this is the same thing as me doing this. Yeah? So any math that you want to do, you can do this. It's freely available to you because the integer is equal to a number. And if you want to multiply, subtract, divide, anything you want to do with math is available on this console. Yeah? Now let's try something else. Let's try doing. What did I just do here? Commented it out. Yes, exactly. So let's do name. Mm-hmm. Okay. So let's say sound one. What do you think is gonna happen here when I do this? Be more confident with your answers. Don't be like, it's okay. What? There'll be an error. Maybe. Bingo. Concatenation. I still have trouble with this word. So concatenation is basically just a fancy word to say the words will be smashed together. Yeah? And this happens with string. Now, if you did this with integers, what would happen? It would be added. The numbers would be added because mathematical operations. But with a string is not an integer. It's very different, and you will see in the future why. So in this scenario, in this very specific scenario, when we add these two strings together, it becomes smashed together, concatenate. Hmm. And if there is ever a situation where you're not sure about what is the type of this data, you can find out because the Python gives you the ability. So what is sound one again? What is the data type here? Hmm. And if we do this, if we say print, and inside print, if we do type, and we give it the variable that we want to test, it will give us something like this, str. And str stands for string. Let's do something else. Let's say, what is the type of this? What is the type of this? Okay, let's find out. Yes, int, because it's an integer. Let's find out whether, what is this again? Righto. And what do we have? Exactly. So if you're ever unsure about what the type of data is, print the type of that data out. Because when we go forward, you will see that there are different approaches to handling different data. Yeah. Um, in about 2-3 slides, we'll get there. But this is super important. I want you guys to remember that there are different data types. There's floats, there's integers, there's strings, and there's booleans. Yeah. And we will see why very, very soon. Question. Hmm. Yeah. Hmm. Very good question. So earlier we saw that we can add numbers, and we saw that we can smash strings together. What do you think will happen if what Paula just said? We added a string to a number. Maybe. Exactly. Right? We see a big fat error. And we don't want these kind of things when you're, for example, a multi-million dollar business who depends on people coming to your application to use it. Right? Because if your application stops working for 1 hour, that's millions of dollars in losses. So you got to make sure that, simple issues such as, engineers need to know the data types. Because if you don't know the data types and if you don't know how to work with them in different methods, bad things happen, which is why it's really important for me to tell you guys about the fundamentals of this. And we will see in a bit. But right now, I think enough talking from me. I think we need to see more exercises. Now, everyone here knows what the basic data types is. You know what a variable is. Let's try to do part one first. So think that you're going shopping and you're trying to figure out what's the total cost of your basket. I do this all the time, right? So according to this, read the first one. What is it telling us? It's telling us to create a variable called item price. Do we know how to do that? So let's do that. And you will create this variable and then you will assign it a number. Sure. The best practice is if you create different variables. Do not print directly. Mhm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Good job. Oh, what are we doing? Okay. Good job. Sure. You can do this. You can type clear and you press enter. If you know, if there is too much words at the bottom of your computer screen and you don't like it, you can just type clear, press enter, it'll delete everything. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And why is this? Look at line number 5. There's something funny about the print. Exactly. Bingo. No worries. Okay. So, ideally, you should be looking at something like this. Item price should be 19.99. And quantity, it can be item quantity, should be 3. Okay, maybe I'll type it out. So, item price, how much was it? 19.99. And what was the second variable? Mm-hmm. Quantity. And what was that? Mm-hmm. And what was the next instruction? Total cost. Okay. What do I do? Times? Okay, good. And what do I do now? Print total cost. Okay. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Without this. How about now? Not necessarily. Is it correct? Okay. Did you guys get the same answer? Good. Wow. Good. Let's extend this. Yes. Look at the part 2. Let's try to work on that for now. Try. Let's try. Mm, yeah, because there's some issues here. Because you see, it says name is not defined. There's an error there. Well, hmm, let's find out. So, mhm. It says name is not defined. So it tells us that we're trying to print name, but name is not some. Yeah. So this is the error. So you see, we're trying to print a variable called name, but name is not assigned anywhere. Yeah. So if you try to print something that is not there, it will shout at you. So if you do this now, Because you have it here also. So I'm going to remove this, okay? Where's name? Okay. Yeah. No, don't, yeah. So, think name. Paolo will help you in a bit. Uh-huh. Okay. Mm-hmm. So, basically, what line number one is asking you to do is create a variable called store name and call it GPT fashions, right? Just assign the variable GPT fashions. Number two, we are going to be creating another variable, and it's called receipt message. Yeah, and this receipt message is going to be a string, and this string will contain you bought 3 t-shirts from GPT Fashion for a total cost of $59.97, right? But I don't want you to copy paste this. Do not copy paste this. Because remember, store name is GPT Fashions, right? Total is already stored in total cost. The number of t-shirt quantity is already stored in item quantity. So what I would like you guys to do is create a string from these variables. That's one. You can do Control Z sometime. It is? Don't worry about it. Start from scratch. Yeah, because of the brackets now. So if you remove the brackets, it will. Yes, because the spelling is different. Item is this itemy, and this is item quantity. Let's increase the size. Better? Mm-hmm. Hmm? Good? Okay. How are we doing? Problems? Problems? Good, because this is expected. This is a trick question. You were not gonna get it right. So, everybody's stuck somewhere? Good, good. This is part of the puzzle. Right. So why this is happening is because I basically asked you guys to create a string using variables that is a number, that is an integer. Yes? Because if you remember earlier, item price, what kind of data type is it? Exactly. An item quantity? Uh-huh. And the name of the shop? Okay. And if you take all of this and you try to make it into a string, as I said earlier, data types, bad things happen, right? So if we want a string like this over here, we have to do some conversion. we have to convert the floats, the integers that we have, into a string. And we do that by using something special that Python gives us. And we call these special tools that help us convert floats, integers into strings as functions. Yeah. So things that help us in Python to do a little additional stuff. We call it functions. And how we can do this is like this. Let me copy this. And let's do receipt message. This is what I want, right? And this is a string. But I cannot put integer variables inside the string. To do this, we have to do something called conversion. We have to convert our string, our integer, our float into a string. And we do this by something like this. We can say item quantity as string, right? And we can say str right? Or we can do this. Receipt, I will show you receipt message. New receipt, let's call it new receipt message. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create one string here, and I'm going to combine this with str is a function, and it helps us convert floats and integers into strings. So if I print this right now, so what do you guys think this is? Is this now a string or is it an integer? Item quantity here is an integer. What is it here? Are you sure? Let's find out. Let's do print type, and let's print this out. Exactly. And if we do this, let's print this out, right? Let's just see what type it is. It's still a string. So what just happened here is that we took item quantity, we forced it to become a string, and then we added this string with this string. Are you guys with me so far? Okay. So I need to print, but remember, our message is not finished. We have a lot to do. Remember, from, okay, I say from GPT fashions. GPT fashions is store name. Do I need to do anything here? Why not? Exactly, because it's already a string. So let's just put that in there. Okay. Now we got to say from store name for a total of. Okay. What's next? Mm-hmm. What do we do now? Do we need to convert anything? Everybody else? To print total cost. in this string, what do we do? Convert it to float, apparently. Do we agree? Exactly, because right now, this is already, what is this type? This is a string. Let's find out. I'm not sure. Let's print. And how do we print? How do we find out what type something is? Okay, let's do that. Total cost. Because of this. It's a float, apparently. And why is it a float? Because it's a multiplication of two floats. Yeah, which makes it a float. So now that we know it's a float, how do we convert that into a string? Yeah, you think that'll work? There we go. Now, do you see what just happened here? Look at that. Do you see how we had a combination of data types, and we use this combination of data types to produce something? But to produce that something, we needed to first do some rearranging, conversion. Yeah. And this is not just related to string only. It could be, sometimes there might be a time where there is a float, right? A float can be 150.5689. It can go to 10 decimal points. But in your shopping bill, do you really want to see that much? No, sometimes you just want to see 10 digits, 2 digits, right? So these kind of helper functions that help us convert values, data types is really, really important in programming. Yeah. Any questions on this with me so far? No. Good question. There are no spaces. So how do we add spaces? Give me an idea. Really? Brackets? Uh-huh. Okay. Like this? Inside the bracket. Okay. And? All right, let's try that. So str, so there should be, right now, there's no space here. Let's see if this works. Worked. And that's how we add spaces. Good. Okay, sure. Which one do you want? Uh-huh. Mm-hmm. We will get to that in intermediate Python. Yes. So this little exercise that we just did was I want to showcase something, the functions, the little helpers in Python that help us do more with our data types, right? Now, there are many, many functions in Python that help us do a lot of different things. And here we have a couple of cool stuff. Everybody knows the first one, print. This is a Python function. It helps us to display whatever we feed inside it. Yeah. And then we just saw that we can use the type function to discover the type of a data type. Yeah. And we also discovered that str, which is string, can be used to convert a number or a float to a string. In the same approach, we have something called int and float. You can try this with me. You can print. Now, the int function helps us convert things into an integer. So let's say that we put 5.5. What do you think will pop up as the answer? Let's make it 5.4, just to be on the easier side. What do you think will pop up? 5? 5 it is, because it converted the float into the closest integer. What do you think will happen if I do this? Mm-hmm. What happened? Mm-hmm. Because it converts into an integer, it doesn't round off. Rounding off and integers are two different things. With me so far? So it rounds down. It doesn't, because in our heads, we round off to the closest top or the bottom decimal point. But with here, we don't do that. We always round off to the closest bottom. Let's do this. Let's try this one. What did we learn? Float. What do you think will happen if I did this? 8.0? Yes. Let's find out. Exactly. And what about this? Mm-hmm. And what about this? What will it do? It does nothing because it's a float. We gave it a float. So these type of functions only convert if it's something else. If you give a float function a float, it does nothing. But if you pass a float into an int function, it converts into an integer. If you pass this into, what happens now? What happens? Nothing changes? What happens? It will not work. People from the back? Error? Nothing? But like absolutely nothing, or does what? Data type changes, something happens? Exactly. It'll be a string because these functions help us do one thing and one thing only. The str function converts whatever into a string. The float converts whatever integer that we pass into it into a float. The int function takes floats and converts it into an integer. With me so far? These are just helpful little, like Santa's little helpers. They let us do a lot of cool stuff that would not be so easy without them. Another cool thing that I think you guys will like is something called input. Now, input is very cool because it lets us be interactive, ask questions. And this is very important when you're creating an application because, this is, okay, this is not the coolest thing in the world, right? Sitting here, typing this out, printing things out, it's not that cool, right? It doesn't bring you enough money. Money is when you talk to people with your application and let them use your application. And part of that is asking questions from users, right? And we can ask questions by something called the print function. So let's try something out, right? Let's say name, right? And I do something like this. What's your name? Okay. And I will play this. And it will ask me this question, what's your name? Right? And I will reply to it. Oh, hold on. My bad. I will do Right. Name. Mm. My interpreter is not working. Yeah, but my interpreter is having some issues. Paolo, do you know why the interpreter is not picking this up? Yeah. Yeah, but when I print it out, it should be. Hmm. In the sense? Oh, of course. Yeah, because print, yes. Exactly. So, as you can see, I make mistakes too. Okay, so let's do this with me, right? So we have an input and we have name and we run this Python and then it asks me what my name is. Let's tell my name. And then it prints my name back at me. So what happened here is that we initialized a function that asks a question from the user. And whatever answer that the user gave is stored in this variable. And we print it. Yeah? So how would I change this? How would I update this to ask my age? Hmm? Okay. New question. Where? To here? Okay. And print age. Okay. But why is it not asking my age at the same time? Exactly. Because this code is running in sequence, right? Remember, top to bottom. So it first asks you the first question, waits for your answer, and the moment you give the answer, it will then move to asking you the second question. Oh, just like that. And then it'll print both because it has both answers inside the program. Can you try asking yourself what the name is, what your own name is? I think those two who came recently are very tough. Can you help me? Of course you can. Hmm. Sure, yeah. So it finds my name because I give it my name. What's your name? Thue. Okay. I'm going to say you are 25 randomly, right? Now, do you think it will tell me my name or your name? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes. Oh, it gets deleted from the computer forever. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Uh-huh. But where is age? You don't have this age input. See? That's why it's getting stuck. You're not asking you're saying you want to print the variable age, but the variable age is not anywhere here. You see? Age is not defined. So you have to ask the question and assign it to age, and then you will be able to print it. You need another input and give it the variable age, and then you can print it out. So the print function is super helpful, and we are going to be using that in the future, like in about 2-3 slides, to ask questions, get answers, play with that answer, and return something back, right? So, but before we go there, I want to show you guys a few more cool functions. Another function is called sum. And this sum function does something very similar, as the name specifies. It does this. It basically sums whatever number you feed into it, right? So if you print sum 5, 6, you should, hold on, let me just delete all of this and clear this. Mm, Object is not iterable. Why is it not iterable? Moment. Let me see the specs for this. Ah, so let's do numbers. Let's say 5, 5, 3, and let's feed numbers over here. Oh, numbers. So this is basically a function that allows us to feed a number of numbers, giving us the total sum of whatever we passed into it. Yeah. So this is more useful than us doing print 5 plus 5 plus 3 plus 5, right? This is a lot of work. This, not so much. Another cool function is something called max. And max basically gives us, it takes a series of numbers, let's say 5, 3, 2, 10, and it gives us the highest number from the numbers that we passed in. With me so far? The opposite of this function is called min. And what do you think min does? What does min do? Minimum? Exactly. Minimum returns the smallest number that was passed into it. Now we're going to jump into a little exercise covering these functions. Do you guys understand these functions enough to feel confident about moving to the next step? Yeah? Perfect. Quite similar to what we were doing earlier. Mm-hmm. Sure, sure, sure. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. No, it's still there. You have to play it again because. Okay. There you go. 13. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But remember, you can have only one variable with the same name. Quick thing now, if you use a variable at the top called name, you cannot assign it again to something else at the bottom. You can, but we don't recommend it. Yeah, because the code changes in a very unpredictable way. So if you assign something at the top, make sure that you try not to change it too much as you go to the bottom of the code. Ah, you kind of do. Yeah. That's okay. Okay. Everybody's confident? Okay, so let's move on a little bit. Can I move on to the answer so that you guys can check? Yes, yes. Good. Okay, so let's do this. Let's find the average cost. What is the average cost? Total cost by quantity, item quantity. Okay, and then somebody else. You're too good at this. You're very good at giving answers. I need somebody else. Print average cost. Okay. Print average cost. Okay. We got 1999. Is that correct? Okay. And what do we do next? Convert it into string. And how do we do that? Okay. And what do we use it for now? After converting into a string, what do we do? Create a new. Okay. So we need to. Okay. So let's call this average cost string. And how do I create a string of the average cost? Uh-huh. Okay. And what's next? What do I do next? Empty space. Okay. Plus. Uh-huh. Okay. Like this. And a space at the beginning. Okay. That's another good shortcut. And what's next? Mm-hmm. And what is the type of this average cost string? Exactly. There we go. Well done. This was really good progress considering that we only have, quite a short bit of time. Really good progress. I'm really proud of you guys. Okay. Now, let's play with the big toys. We've been talking about functions. Yeah, you guys saw the min, you saw the max, you saw the str, floats, all the cool stuff. And these are stuff that is provided to us out of the box with Python. But you have the capacity to create custom functions by yourself. And these custom functions are super useful because, when we write code, we have a principle called write dry code. And dry stands for do not repeat yourself. Because, when you have a code base, if you write code that is repeated everywhere, the same code 500 times, there are code bases that are so large that people tend to repeat themselves. And in the programming world, this is considered a no-no because, you're basically just copy pasting things. And copy pasting lines of code is not a good idea. It's not maintainable. It's not reusable, right? So we have the ability to create something like the functions that we saw with Python, right? And creating is very simple, but as long as you follow a few rules, and I will tell you the few rules. So one of the rules is that when you're creating a custom function, you have to start with def, right? This is a must. And you can give it whatever name you want, right? It can be my name, it can be your name, it can be cat, dog, cow, it doesn't matter. It's just the name of the function. It's very random. And after this name, we have to give it brackets. And inside these brackets, we have something called inputs, right? We call it an input because we pass something inside this function. You saw that we did this earlier. For example, with the str function, we passed something into it. We passed an integer and it got converted into a string. Yes? In the same way, our function takes something inside it, input. And the input can be anything. It can be name, it can be wall, it can be table. You can call it anything you want, right? And then we have these two dots. This is also another must. And then return is basically the function doing something and returning it. So right now, this function has one job and one job only. And that is, it takes a name. A name can be anything. It can be a boolean, it can be a string. But right now, it's a string. It takes this name and it returns a combination of hello plus the name. So this is this. So if you take this function, say hello, and you pass it Paulo, it goes inside here. This becomes Paulo. And it says hello plus exactly. And it returns that because we have the return over here to message. And if I print message, it becomes hello Paulo, right? So let's try something very similar, like this right now, right? Now we saw the sum, yeah. So sum of numbers. So let's do classic num, right? So we have sum, and we have 5 plus 6. Now you know what this does. What is, if I print this out, what do you think I will see? If I do this, what will I see? Exactly, 11. Yeah? Because sum is something that is given to us by Python. And we have 11. Now, remember, this is the name of the function. This is the input. And this is us calling it. Now let's try to do the same thing with a function that we create, right? So let's say something like def sum of numbers, right? And let us do this. And this custom function that we are creating is going to be taking two inputs, both numbers. So it could be, we can call it anything, remember. It could be number 1, and it could be number 2. Now that we have the inputs, we put the 2 dots. And this is important. Remember, in Python, when you're creating a function, you need to have 4 spaces from the corner. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Always. This is a must, right? Normally, Visual Studio Code, which you are using right now, it does it automatically, so you don't have to think about it. But, if you get stuck somewhere when creating a Python, this is most likely the most possible reason. And we do this, return, and we take this. And we go out of the sum, right? So if you are here at the end of at the beginning of your coding and let's say environment, you are outside the function, right? So now you can use it. Let's say const sum of two numbers. And what do I pass in here now? Number 1 and number 2. Give me an example. 1 and 5. Okay. 1 and 5. Whoop. We just created our own sum function. Can we all try this? Let me know if it works for you guys. No, that's okay. That is the end. Yeah. Marcus, I think the battery's running low on this. Okay. Everybody got this? Okay. So, quick question. Let's convert this into something else, okay? Let's say some, let's say introduce yourself. Let's call this introduce yourself, okay? And let's say name. Let's change it up. Age. This time we are doing something special. My name is, what should I pass in here? What should be my inputs? Hmm? Name and age. But what kind of inputs? What should the data type be here? Can I do this? Can I do this, for example? Can I do this? I can. Mm-hmm. Look a little harder and tell me whether I can. Age must be str. Hmm. Does that make sense? Age must be str. Why must age be str here? Exactly. Because I am passing a string as my name here. But this is an integer. And an integer is, so age will become integer. And this is also an integer. So what's happening here is that I am trying to combine a string with an integer, which means that we will see the same problem that we had earlier when we are trying to combine integers and strings. So there are two solutions here. I can add str for sure to convert this input. But where do I put this str? Where do I include the str? Before age. But where? Here? Here? Okay. So str, and this would work. Ah, it should work, and it did work, right? Good. Now, I want you guys to think about this a little bit. Perfectly correct answer. But sometimes, some people might think, hey, you know what? I'll just do this. Sure. And then you don't have to do that, right? But sometimes the world is not perfect. Sometimes bad people try doing weird things with systems. People are very unpredictable. If you think that they are going to do X, they do completely something else. So in programming, we always have like backups to handle user behavior that is not ideal. So, you know, if we do what we did earlier, str over here, it doesn't matter what we put. We can put 29, it will still put the string out. We can put 29 as an integer, it will still put the string out, right? It doesn't matter what we do because we're still protected by the fact that we have this strh to push that string out. With me so far? Again, sorry. Sure, sure. Single quotations, double quotations, both of them makes a string. If I do this, you mean? Excuse me? If I do double quotation here, yeah, it's still a string. Okay, sure. hmm Go up. Is it- I think probably because you're asking a print somewhere up there. So it's asking this question first. Remove the input and it should work. Remove the input and it should work. Because there's an input somewhere in your code that is stopping the code from running and asking the question. So in your code, somewhere up there, so an easy way to avoid this is do this. So block it out. Command. Yeah. Now play that and it should work. Because you had what was the input method in your code. Yeah? No. That's fine. So you have one file. Yeah? And this one file, because we were doing many exercises, and you have all the exercises up there or bottom at the page. Yeah? So that also runs. So you don't want those old code to run because it will block your page or your script, right? So whenever you write some new code like the one that we're doing right now, cancel it out. And what is the result you want? Uh-huh. Introduce yourself. Yeah, because you are not following the principles of four spaces. 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's do this. Oh. Mm-hmm. Paula, can I have your help here for a sec, bro? I think your script is stuck somewhere, but Paula will help you in a bit, yeah? Right? Sure. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Error. Error. Because you cannot combine numbers and strings. Okay. So how are we feeling about custom functions? It's a lot. How are we feeling? Yeah? Do you guys feel good about creating custom functions? There's a lot of scared looking faces. Hmm. Sorry. Yeah, no, you can't do that. You need to have these, like I said, creating a function means that you have to meet certain conditions. And one of those conditions is that you have the def, you have, if you want to, if you want the function to take an input, you have to mention that input in the brackets, and then you have to have the four spaces under the function. You know, right now it might feel like, oh crap, it's a lot of instructions, but it becomes second nature when you do more of it. And you will see this going forward. When we are creating more and more functions, you will see it becomes easier. The first couple of times, it's really irritating because one space messes up your whole program. And there are plenty of times when all of us spend days trying to find something, and it just turns out there's something silly like a space or extra comma was stopping the whole program from running. It's frustrating. I get it. Right. Uh, I know you guys are like brain tired right now, but I promise you, we're almost done. We have like 24 minutes or so. I hope I'm not turning you guys off and that you'll show up next week as well. This it gets fun. It gets fun. There's a fun part to it, I promise you. Okay. So let's do something, okay? Let's do a little exercise. Let's create a custom function. And the job of this custom function is to take 150 centimeters and return that in meters, right? So the name of your function will be meter converter, conveniently. So this meter converter function that you are going to create, it takes a number as centimeters, right? And the job of this custom function you're doing is it has to convert the centimeters into meters. So divide whatever number you're passing by 100 and tell me how much it is in meters. So perfect scenario is I will write here if you can see me. We need better pens. So let's say something like meters. Ah, better. The name of this function. So meter converter. Okay. So this is meter converter. This is your custom function. This is the one that you guys are going to be creating now, right? Okay. I can tell by your face that you can't see much. I will write it. So let's say meters. Okay. This is a variable, and this variable is going to get whatever value from meter converter. So if I do this, right, and if I print meters, I want to see 1.5. So create a custom function called meter converter that does this job. You have to create the function. You have to create the function. You have to do something like this. In the sense, it could be an answer. Yeah, no, this is just, whatever is here, all of this is very specific to this function, right? Okay, don't just give me 1.5, right? So if I put 250 here, it needs to be 2.5. It has to do the math. Yeah? Okay. Hmm, you can use the introduce yourself as motivation. Uh-huh. Tuck, tuck, tuck. Mhm. Mhm. This is the motivation, right? You need to create a function that looks like this, takes a number and returns this number divided by 100. How are we doing? Good? Everybody can feed centimeters into that and get the meters back? Yeah, good. I'm really happy. This is really good progress, and I'm not like just saying that. Functions are like quite hard to grasp at first moments. So I'm really proud of you guys for getting into this so fast. Okay, but before I move on, are you guys sure you're done? Can I see your functions? Okay, you're passing a number, yeah? You cannot say 150. You have to give it some value, like a name. I will do it in front of the whole class. So let's think about this. We have this function, right? And this function is supposed to do one job, and that is take centimeters in and return the number that we passed in as meters, which means that we're going to divide it by 100, returning us centimeters in meters. Now remember, this could be anything. right? It could be cat divided by 100, right? The function doesn't care. The function cares that what you put here is what is here, right? It'll still work. But in programming, it's good to give names, correct names. So if you're passing a number in centimeters, don't call it dog, you know, because 2 years later, when somebody else is going to be reading your code, trying to understand what's happening, he's going to be super confused. So if you have a function and the function's job is to convert centimeters into meters, give it a nice name, like meter converter or centimeters into meters converter. It's okay to be long, right? But it's very good if the function name is descriptive. If it tells the guy who's reading the code, this is what the code does. Yeah? Because it's like reading a language. It helps you grasp what's going on so much faster. And this principle applies to inputs also. If you are naming an input, give it a good name, right? If you are putting in a number and it's centimeters, call it centimeters. Don't call it cat, right? If you are giving yourself, if you have a function like introduce yourself, and you know that this is going to be something like my name is Kishore and I'm 29 years old, don't give the first input something like dog name, right? Because you're introducing yourself. Why would you call that dog name? It makes no sense. If the function's name is introduce your dog, okay, makes more sense. Because the function is called introducing your dog, and the purpose of the function is to introduce the name of your dog. That's okay. But if you're introducing yourself, maybe not so much. Yeah. Now, naming things is one of the most difficult things because I might think this name is better. Somebody else might think, hey, it's not better, right? It's a very subjective thing, but as long as you follow common sense and decency, I think it should be good. Right. I can hear a lot of, I hear you. Okay. I will let you go, I promise you. But one last exercise. Do we have energy for one last exercise? Yeah? Okay. You can go to bed and just be like real satisfied with yourself today, okay? Because this is really cool stuff that you guys are doing. Being here, learning all of this. Okay, okay. Let's do this. Let's see how long you've been alive. Kind of scary, but let's find out. We can do this. So think about it like this, right? Create a function. Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. Hmm. So def is how you introduce the function. Like this is okay. Okay. My eyes are not that great. You have to come closer because my lenses are not that good. Oh, perfect. Okay. How are we doing? Mhm. So depth user agent here. Yes, good, good, good. Good. User agent here. Line number 17. Something looks fishy. What's happening? We create the function, and then how do we call the function? Yes, exactly. Because you are waiting for something. Yeah, he's waiting for ears, and you haven't given him ears. Mm-hmm. Yes, and why is that? Now look at line number 18. What are you printing? Bingo. Oh, welcome. Good. What's happening? Show me. hmm So basically, you have to create a function that takes input as ears. Yeah, ears is the input. And then inside the function, you take this ears, you multiply it by 365, and you return it. What we're doing? Finished? Good. You're just scared of living so many days. What's the number? 10,000 what? Mine was 10. Okay, okay. For me? Mm-hmm. Yes, but the problem is that the problem is the math because you are multiplying the age by 365 and then dividing it again. So it becomes age. Ah, this is what you want. Okay, okay. But if you want a days, you have to remove the 365 division. Right? Okay, yes. How are we doing? Confident, cocky? Uh-huh. Mm-hmm. No, no. Because see, you're not calling that. Because if you cancel this, there is no more number of exactly. So it'll throw an error. Yeah. Sure, but you don't look 57. If you are, that's great skin. Okay, I think a lot of us have got it. Good. Okay. What about you, sir? What are we doing? Mhm. That's weird. Mhm. Okay. So first trick is you need to ask the question. Yeah. And the question is, how do we ask a question? Print is something that we use to print, but to ask a question, we use input. But don't worry too much about the input actually. Let's worry about the function first. So alive, yeah. So we need to no space, and we don't do this. We don't do math here, yeah. We just feed it. So where's the comma? Okay. So we do that, right? And you don't need to pass this, for example, according to the question, right? So basically, what I'm asking you to do is take the number of years you have been alive, so your current age. Oh, jeez. Sorry, I have butter fingers. Yeah, so you will take the age and you will multiply the age by 365. Mhm. Okay, now let's use this function. Let's find out. Okay, but you have to call it. Mhm. You have this function now. It's great. It's looking great, right? But now the next step is you have to use this function. And we use this function by calling it. And how do we call the function? Return basically returns the result of this. Yeah? So you have to create a variable. Sure. Alive something else, but because you can't use the same thing again. It's the hardest part of naming. It drives me crazy. Wow. No, no. That's great. I do the same thing. Okay. So now we gotta assign it, right? Oh, assign it like the equal sign. Hmm. And how do we call the function now? Close, close, but you already did that over here. So you can just do this alive. And because you're passing, you said that you're going to send something, yeah? So you have to, exactly. So give me your, a number would be better. Exactly. And that's all. That's all you have to give it. Yeah, no, no numbers. So, yeah, because we are passing that over here, yeah? So if you put 24 here, this becomes 24. And this becomes 24 multiplied by 365. And date becomes this result. So if you print it out now, mhm, bingo. Oh, where is it? Yeah, delete the input for me, please. And the input. Yeah, the whole thing. Let's delete the whole thing. Uh-huh. It can stay. There we go. So, can you tell me what happened here? Hmm. Yeah, so this doesn't matter. None of this matters. What matters is that you created a function, and the function has an input, age, right? So, because like the job that you have to do on the exercise is that you have to create a function. It can be anything, right? So right now you made it alive. And this function has to take a number, your ears, and multiply it by 365 and return it. And you did that here. So we created the function space for the input, and we return the input into 365, and we assigned it to date, and we printed it. Yeah, no worries. Sure. Of this one, yeah. Okay, so we'll do it together. Mhm. We will do it now. Yeah. Okay. So let's do this together. Yeah. Let's do this in 2 steps. And this one was complicated. I agree, right? Because it had some little tricks. So let's do this one by one. So our initial job was to create a function, a custom function that will take the number of years, our age, right? And it will take this age and it will return the number of days we've been alive. So that age multiplied by 365. Let's create that. I'm going to, what did I say it's been? Let's say days alive, right? And what should I put as the input here? Age, good. Years, age, whatever works. Or we can do better. Age in years. Yeah, much more descriptive. So let's do this. And what happens now? Mm-hmm. What are we returning? Mm-hmm. Good. Okay. We have a function now, right? How do we use this function now? We can print the value. Okay. You call it. Okay. Let's call it and then we will print it. Yeah. So, mm, mm-hmm. Okay. So, but remember, this is days alive. If we divide this by 360, that will be years. Yeah. So, okay. So, number of days alive. Let's do this. And what do I do now? Input the number. Okay. Let's say I'm 21. I'm not. And to see this, we will print it out. Yes. All right. Let's see. So I'm officially 7,665 days old. If I was 21. That's a big if. Now, this is the function. It does the job, right? But, it's still inside our computer. It's not asking us any questions. How do
as a result of calling this function to number of days and return the function. Pretty clear. Then we want to just make things a little bit generic. We want to do our user questions and ask them the question what is A, then input. And this input then converted into an integer because inputs are strings as a general rule of thumb. And then we assigned it to edge, and then we passed it over here. So now our function is much more dynamic, where I can say I'm 21 and get 7665. If I say I'm 29, I'll get 10,000 something something. And this is basically how a lot of programming mostly works. We ask people questions, they give us an answer. We take this answer, process it, do some crazy things with it, and give them an answer in return. Right? And the fact that you guys have been able to grasp what a function is, how to answer questions, how to process these answers, convert data types, work with data types, use these inbuilt functions, create your custom functions. It's fantastic. Paulo and Marcus would tell you that it took us a little bit longer than 2.5 hours in our lives to learn these things, like weeks maybe. But you guys have done fantastic at it, and I'm really proud of you guys for doing it. And I'm not just saying that because I've been going around looking at your computers. You guys know, you guys get this stuff, right? It's not rocket science, it's not scary. You guys are doing this in 2.5 hours. So that's something to be proud about. And I think that if you continue down this, if you give us 3 more weeks, we can really make something really cool happen, right? No pressure, but do try to come. The next classes are every Monday for the next 3 weeks. Exact same time, exact same place. The sessions will be recorded. They will be provided as a YouTube video or some other hosting platform. But it's not a substitute for being here because me, Marcus, Paula, and we can just walk around and talk with you guys, ask questions, answer questions. So it's just more interactive this way. So thank you for coming. It's really great.
Much appreciated.
Hopefully see you guys soon.
Thanks.